Good morning. Welcome to the Washington Ethical Society. I am not Judy Myers, who is your scheduled officiant today. I am Adam Briskin Limehouse. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the officiant for today's platform address. WES is one community unified across time and space, gathering for these Sunday platforms to affirm our values and commit to a better world. So I want to welcome those of you who are here in the hall, those who are watching now on Zoom, and those who are catching the recording later. If you are on Zoom, please check the chat for a welcome and various tips from Peter Bishop, today's Zoom chat usher. If you're here in the hall and would like an assistive listening device, please ask the sound team at the back. A special welcome to our visitors today. We'd love to get to know you and answer any questions you have. To get on our email list, you can fill out the connection form at tiny.cc/WESconnects or send an email to wes@ethicalsociety.org. And if you're here in person, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after platform or just chat up anyone with one of these white name badges. I'll now check the Zoom chat to see who's attending remotely this morning. Eric Moyer and Julie Campbell both say hello. Eric particular notes bodily autonomy is foundational to freedom. Karen Schofield Leica, oh dear, Joseph I, Sam Nguyen, and Judy Myers all say good morning. It is good to connect and to share this time together. The opening words this morning come from the website of this month's Share the Plate recipient, Sister Song. We believe that reproductive justice is a human right. Reproductive justice is based on the United Nations internationally accepted Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a comprehensive body of law that details the rights of individuals and the responsibilities of government to protect those rights. It is about access, not choice. Mainstream movements have focused on keeping abortion legal as an individual choice. That is necessary, but not enough. Even when abortion is legal, many women of color cannot afford it or travel hundreds of miles to the nearest clinic. There is no choice when there is no access. Reproductive justice is not just about abortion. Abortion access is critical, and women of color and other marginalized women also often have difficulty accessing contraception, comprehensive sex education, STI prevention and care, alternative birth options, adequate prenatal and pregnancy care, domestic violence assistance, adequate wages to support our families, safe homes, and so much more. Today, Mary Breen Rothman, and accompanied by Susan Alexander, will be sharing their gifts of music with us.
There's a fisherman sitting alone on the land. His hands are his craft, his boat is his art. A fisherman sitting alone on the land, a cold rock in his heart. There's a silky maid swimming alone on the bay. Her eyes are the seals, her heart is the sea. A silky maid swimming alone on the bay, a pure white seal maiden is she. She comes to the shore and she sheds her seal skin. She dances on sand, dances under the moon. Her hair falls in waves down upon her white skin, and only the seals hear the tune. La 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 la. Then standing the fisherman takes her sealskin, staking his claim for a wife from the sea. He raises his hand holding up the white skin, saying, "Now you must come home with me." Oh, weeping she goes, and still weeping she stays. Her hands are her craft, her babes are her art. A year and a year and a year more she stays, a cold rock in her heart. But what is this hid in the fisherman's bag? It smells like the ocean, it feels like the sea. A bonny white sealskin wrapped up in the bag, and never a tear more cried Goodbye to the house and goodbye to the shore. Goodbye to the babes that I never could claim. But never a word to the man left on shore, for Selkie's my nature and name. She puts on the skin and dives back in the sea. The fisherman's cries fall on water-deaf ears. She swims in her sealskin away out to sea, and the fisherman drowns in his tears.
Each week we read our statement of purpose as a reminder of our shared values. Usually a member reads the statement, conveniently printed here, then lights the community candle. Currently I see the name of one person who's enthusiastically signed up to participate in the platform by doing this for several of the upcoming weeks. If you'd like to know who that person is, you can find out by checking out tiny.cc/readsfp. While you're there, choose a week and sign up. Today's reader is Carl Pfeiffer.
The Washington Ethical Society is a humanistic congregation that affirms the worth of every person. We strive through our relationships to elicit the best in the human spirit. With faith in human goodness, we appreciate each person's unique capacities. We joyfully celebrate together and support each other through life. We nurture a sense of reverence and responsibility for each other and the earth. We invite you to join our community of children and adults as we work for a world where love and justice cross all borders.
Thank you so much, Carl. As Carl lights our community candle, I invite everyone to join in our candle lighting words. May we kindle within us the warmth of compassion, the light of understanding, and the fire of commitment to build a brighter future for all. Let us now enter into the centering time of our platform. Each week, we ring this chime in solidarity with people around the world. Today, I am particularly mindful, again, of all women across this country who have lost access to reproductive services, all women who are forced to carry pregnancies they no longer wish or never wished at all. As we listen to the chime, let us remember our connections to each other and the world around us. Let us open our hearts to compassion for those who suffer. And let us commit ourselves to the work that calls for our love. Now into our meditation. Let's begin by settling our bodies. That may mean stretching first to release any tension, mindful if there are others right next to you, then finding position where your body feels at ease. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Let your mind become not silent, but quieter, so that it can flow more smoothly rather than darting about. However you feel comfortable, with eyes open or closed. Take some deep, nourishing breaths. Inhale refreshment and exhale stress. See if you can think of one good thing you did yesterday or today. It may not have been big or grandiose. Maybe you smiled at somebody. Maybe you listened to them. Maybe you let go of some annoyance at a clerk in a store. Maybe you forgave yourself for not saying something totally correctly. Maybe you were generous. Maybe you sat down to meditate. Maybe you thanked a bus driver. It is not conceit or arrogance to consider these things. In fact, it is nourishing. It is replenishing to take joy, to take delight in the good that moves us and that we can manifest. And in this way, we can connect to the love and the compassion that do exist in the world. And breathe. We continue our meditation in silence.
I am light, I am light. 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 I am not the things my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. 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 I am light, I am light. I am not mistakes that I have made, or any of the things that cause me pain. I am not the pieces of the dream I left behind. I am light. 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 I am not the color of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race. My soul inside is all light, all light. I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I am divinity defined. I am the God on the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all. I am light. I am
Today's reading comes from the organization SPARC, Reproductive Justice Now. SPARC defines reproductive justice as a social justice movement rooted in the belief that individuals and communities should have the resources and power to make sustainable and liberatory decisions about their bodies, genders, sexuality, and lives. Reproductive justice is pro-sex, sexuality, gender, queer bodies, access to abortion and contraception, birth rights, and chosen families, and so much more. Reproductive justice is struggling towards liberation within and with community, working towards a world free of reproductive violence and oppression, systems of oppressions, institutional control, eugenics, medicalization, and violence that works to uphold and reinforce dangerous and negative policies, practices, and culture. For us, reproductive justice is working in the South, which is a powerful history of resistance and organizing for power and change against the legacy of slavery and oppression that in many, many ways has set the context of how we understand bodies, politics, labor, and reproduction in the United States. The South is ground zero for dangerous and restrictive legislative policies, but is also home to a number of fierce communities that intersect gender, justice, and LGBTQI, sexual and health rights with racial justice and immigrants' rights. We know what it means to build with community, centralizing the voices of the most marginalized and underrepresented. Our platform speaker today is WES's senior leader, Casey Slack.
Thank you, Adam. Can we take a brief moment to applaud for Adam, who did not know this morning that he would be officiating? If you were to ask people who know me well but not the best, they would be deeply surprised to find that in about a year and a half as your senior leader, I have not spoken explicitly about abortion or reproductive justice. Abortion, birth control, and quality sex ed are where my ethical, political, religious life actually started. I didn't grow up in a church. I didn't actually get taught anything about sex or sexuality in an official capacity until I was a senior in high school. When I was in 8th grade, somebody got pregnant. I was in 8th grade and I was really young for being in 8th grade. The girl who got pregnant was about 2 years older than I was. I was 12. She was 14. We were all too young for all of that. But I didn't know that people my age or people around my age could get pregnant when someone got pregnant in 8th grade. And I didn't know that someone could complete a pregnancy until she had that baby and we were freshmen in high school and I was 13 and she was 15 and she had an infant. I became obsessed with learning everything I could about reproduction and if that could be controlled and how. It felt to me like a trap had been laid for us, that we were going to have sexual feelings and we were here in this little tiny town with nothing to do, and no one was gonna tell us how to do this in a way that didn't end in a baby we were not ready for. I learned a lot of things. A spark of the person who I would go on to become, the Casey who you know and perhaps love today. A spark of that person was seen when I was a senior in high school and finally in a health class that wanted to teach something about sex ed. It was 2 days out of a half a semester health class, so we have a lot of curriculum problems. It was 2 days in the fall of 2004. The first day was a terrifying birth video. How many of us have seen the terrifying birth video? Yeah. next to images of sexually transmitted infections in a state that they almost never actually look. How many of us have seen those pictures? Okay. So some of us got better sex ed. Some of us maybe got no sex ed at all. Some of us, I know, got good sex ed because some of us are Carl. And I have a sense of the kind of sex ed Carl has gotten. The second day of this sex ed unit was put on by an evangelical Christian organization called Concerned About Teen Sexuality. Cats, they called themselves. I am, to this day, offended on behalf of cats everywhere. Who would never? A highlight, lowlight, of that experience was what I call the tape thing. If you're familiar with evangelical abstinence-only sex ed, the tape thing might be familiar to you. They give you a piece of tape and then ask you to turn to your neighbor and stick the tape, just Scotch tape, on their skin, and then pull it off. And then you're supposed to try to stick the tape onto somebody else. Now, if you've interacted with Scotch tape, you'll know that it's good for about one stick, if that. It doesn't stick well later, and the point of this exercise, they say, is that if you have sex, you will bond with somebody. And then you will never be able to correctly bond with anybody ever again. I was stunned. There is more to that story. You can ask me later. But we get back to the classroom, and I look at the teacher, who is, of course, the football coach. And I say, "Tell me that's not it." And he says, "What?" I say, "You're the football coach. At least 5 kids in here play on your team. You know they're having sex. You know they're not ready to have a baby. You know that all of these young men will disappear on a girl if she's pregnant." He said, "Well, that's the curriculum. I'm not allowed to teach anything else." Because it was the curriculum, and it was 2004, and the law of the land was abstinence-only sex ed, and I lived in small-town Northeast Ohio, where that went, maybe triple for us. "Okay," I said, "get out." He looked at me, "What? What?" For context, he is 6'4" and built like a football coach, and I am, at the time, 16 years old, and I am blonde, and I have like a blonde bob, so please understand that I'm very much a teenage Casey. And I said, "Get out. Leave." "What?" "I'm gonna tell them something true, and if you can't be here for it, then I'm gonna need you to leave." He was scared enough of me that he left. Made what must have been several laps around our very small school. And as he came back, I was explaining, without visual aid, how to put on a condom. I taught the kids in that class where the Planned Parenthood was, because I knew that they were allowed to get birth control without their parents' consent as long as they were over 16 in the state. I taught them how to take the bus there, because none of us knew how to use a bus. But I had a friend who lived in the city, and she had taught me. I did my best, and as far as I know, none of those kids had a child before they meant to. We tried. It was so important to me that people got education, that people got to make decisions about their bodies. And in the framework I had at the time, knowledge about contraceptives and that abortion existed was about all I could do. But that became the middle of how I think about things. That your body belongs to you, that you get to enjoy its full spectrum of possible experiences however you want to, and that everybody deserves to be born because somebody said yes, not just because somebody didn't have the option to say no. In the course of my time in college, I handed out, I do not know how many condoms. As a sorority girl, surprise. As a sorority girl, I was known for having a bag of condoms and Plan B hanging on the outside of my door. I would say every week at our chapter meeting, remember, if you're going out and you don't know what's gonna happen, grab some condoms. Remember, if you went out and something happened, grab some Plan B if you want to. You don't have to pay me back. I can spare $40 every now and then. Just get what you need. But I didn't really know anything until I worked at an abortion clinic. Abortion care sent me to seminary. Abortion care made really the core of who I am. My counseling skills come more from abortion care than anything else. My depth of commitment to that people know what is best for themselves comes from my work in abortion care. In really only 2 years there, I personally participated in hundreds of abortions, and I am very proud of that. It's okay if pride feels like a weird thing to feel about that to you. I'm telling you that I feel it. I am proud of what I did. I am proud now to newly sit on the board of the same abortion clinic that I worked at all those years ago. It is now one of the only abortion clinics in Ohio. The primary organization bringing suit against the state of Ohio when they infringe upon people's bodily autonomy and rights. We did an exercise at the beginning of my training at the abortion clinic, because you have to be trained for a long time before they will allow you to be alone with a patient. This is a good idea. One of the first things we did was a values clarifying exercise. And I won't ask you to do it, but I'll ask you to think about it. They had us stand up and they asked us questions about how would you feel about, or what would you personally want in this situation, that situation, the other situation? How do you feel about an abortion at 8 weeks? Almost everybody in that context felt completely fine about it. Okay? 16? 20? 24? The numbers got shaken up. How would you feel about having an abortion with only some ibuprofen and a lidocaine shot in your cervix? Personally, I would not feel good about that. But we learned, and I learned over and over again, that that was a choice people would make. Not just because they couldn't afford more sedative, though that too, but because being able to be awake gave them some of their power back. Because they had gotten pregnant through no choice of their own. And being able to be conscious while they stopped being pregnant was enough. I learned that day in training, and then over and over and over again, that people's choices might not make sense to me, but they would still be right for them. By the time I was a year into working at the clinic, I could do almost all of the jobs there. Probably I could perform an abortion if I really needed to. I've never done that because I'm not a doctor. But I could make the appointment, I could counsel you before the appointment, I could hold your hand while you had the procedure, I could fight with the insurance about how much coverage you got. I could fight with the National Abortion Federation about how much money we could give you. I could lie a little bit on the financial aid form in a way that nobody would ever notice, because getting people money was more important to us than filling out the form perfectly. I learned that the people I wanted to have the most judgment of, the Catholic woman who I saw 2 separate times in the course of a year, who told me that by her understanding, having an abortion was more morally okay than using contraception. I don't understand it, but I don't have to live with that choice. She has to live with that choice, not me. The woman who we saw, I don't know, once every 6 months because she thought she was pregnant about that often. She wasn't always, but we saw her a lot. And who, when you talked to her, you learned that nobody had ever taught her that she mattered enough to have a no that mattered, that she mattered enough to get health care. A woman who, every time she got on birth control, would lose her insurance because the state insurance in Ohio loves to kick you off. The state insurance everywhere loves to kick you off, if you don't know that. And she would be trying, but then failing. The women who had abusive partners and children with those people already. And everything in me would say, why don't you just leave? But you can't just leave. You certainly can't just leave if you are actively pregnant. I learned so much about letting go of my own judgment about why people are doing things with their bodies. I learned to think, is there a story that would make me feel okay with this? And then I learned that there were so many stories that would make me feel okay with it that maybe I was just okay with it. I'm not asking you to be where I'm at. I am comfortable with abortion in specific in a way that mostly only people who work in abortion care ever become. I'm not asking you of that. I'm asking you to hear that people will always know something about their experience that you can't know. That there are always details that you're not privy to. There were always details that even if I spent 2 hours in a little tiny room with someone, having them spill out their life to me, details I still wouldn't be able to parse. Women who would tell me that they had gotten pregnant because they were having consensual sex when the man they were having consensual sex with took the condom off. And they would say, you know how men are. And I would say, I don't. Because we live in different worlds sometimes. And what I could expect of the men in my world and what she could expect of the men in her world were different things. I'm not saying that that's good, it is just true. The other thing that I learned doing abortion care that came back to me really hard when Roe was overturned is that Roe was never actually enough. It's that access to abortion was never actually enough, and actually, we weren't even doing access with Roe. The legal right to an abortion has never been the full picture or anywhere close to sufficient to what people actually need. Sure, yes, people need a legal right to do whatever the hell they need to do with their body. They also need to be able to afford to do the things that they need to do with their body. They need to be able to afford to have children if they want them, and not have children if they don't. Roe came also along with a lot of safe, legal, rare language. Listen, we would all like all surgeries to be as minimal as is humanly possible, but we don't say that knee surgery should be safe, legal, and rare. We don't say that hip replacement, which is very dangerous, as some of us know quite up close and personal, should be safe, legal, and rare. We don't pass the kind of judgment on other surgeries that we do on abortion. And there are layered reasons for that. For me, personally, accessible, legal, and as frequent as people need it. We can do some work on how frequently people need it. Let me tell you, most people who have an abortion would prefer to have at least done something less expensive. Access to contraception, education about contraceptives. I cannot tell you how many times, not just in the course of my time in abortion care, but in my time as a sex educator, as a people who knows people who can get pregnant, I have heard the wildest things about contraceptives from people who maybe should know better, and also people who, yeah, why would you know? The number of times someone has suggested to me that an IUD will float around in their body and wind up lodged in their heart. Right, that sounds funny, but do you not know that it ends? That your reproductive system is not an open tunnel into the rest of you? An IUD will not float around and wind up in your heart. It is also not as dangerous as it was for generations before, right? If you heard bad things about IUDs in the 70s or the 80s, that was a different IUD than the ones we have today. The Daikon shield was shaped like a shield and really good at getting embedded in the lining of the uterus. Modern IUDs are T-shaped, much smaller, still with a little bit of risk of getting embedded in a uterus, but much lower, and a much lower perforation risk. Connected to last week's platform, you will hear a lot about hormonal birth control. Oh, but I'll gain weight. Maybe if we lived in a world where gaining weight wasn't the worst thing people could think of, they might feel like they had more easy access to contraceptives, but also maybe if when we developed contraceptive types that can be used by people with penises, we let them go into development instead of saying, well, but there are side effects, and God forbid. But none of that is still enough, because reproduction, which is heavily controlled in this space, is so much more than not being pregnant. It is acknowledging that pregnancy is life-threatening, that when people become pregnant, they take on a serious risk to their own health. People in this room who have been pregnant can tell you much more about this than I can. I know it from a medical and witnessing standpoint, but not from an in-my-body standpoint. But pregnancy changes your body in unbelievable ways. It moves your bones around. People's hair texture changes while they're pregnant. Sometimes, after giving birth, people's abdominal muscles are split in half. And this is just without any particular complications. And there are a lot of possible complications. And we don't thank people nearly enough for the risk and work it takes to give birth and reproduce at all. We have one holiday in which we ostensibly thank people who mother, which is a bigger category than giving birth also. One holiday, and it's like, here, have some flowers. Okay, bye. Insufficient. Insufficient. For years, I would call my mother on my birthday and thank her for letting me live in her body for 9 months, and also for all the stuff she's done since then. She found that very strange, and so I stopped doing it. It has been odd to be my parent, but still, I am deeply thankful for the choice that she made, the decision she made at 32 years old to get pregnant, let me keep her from dyeing her hair and wreak havoc on her body for 9 months. And then to continue to care for me, not just for 18 years, but for, we're almost at 36 of them now. That is a big task. And so I'm going to say this again later when it is in fact Mother's Day, but for all of you who have given birth, who have been pregnant at all, whether or not that ended in a live birth, whether or not you have a child. Wow. Wow, and thank you. Thank you from me, because your children probably are either my peers or some young people I get to know along the way. Some of you, I can see Laura mouthing about grandchildren. Some of you even have grandchildren who get to be young people I know along the way. And what a legacy. We exist as a species because people like you make a decision to do something that is really scary, that is beautiful and weird and terrifying. I hope that you can honor in yourself and that you can feel honored by me, the thing that you did, and that you may do again, depending on who you are and where in your reproductive life you are. It's hard, right? We don't make mothering easy. We don't make parenting easy. We make mothering particularly difficult. And I'm gonna slide into some gender stuff that you will hear as not my favorite place to be. But we're gonna do it, and we're gonna go to the other stuff later. Because mothering also involves breastfeeding. And breastfeeding is a reproductive justice issue. Having a place to breastfeed, having time to breastfeed, not just, okay, well, you have 15 minutes and you can go in this little box that we converted from a storage closet because you made us, right? A place of employment should not only allow space for breastfeeding, but time. And judgment about whether a parent breastfeeds or not is one of those things we all gotta get over. People do and don't breastfeed for a wide range of reasons that are, as it turns out, none of your business. Unless those are your personal breasts, perhaps the breasts of a partner, perhaps, that's a big perhaps, or you are the lactation consultant or doctor of the person in question. And even then, if they didn't ask, it's not your business. Formula is fine. Breastfeeding is fine. A fed baby is the best possible thing. Fed. And people deserve support in getting quality formula that does not have contaminants in it and that does not cost, a car worth of money. One of my favorite little phrases is, if you saw someone stealing formula, no, you didn't. It's a hard stance on theft, I'm clear. But if you saw someone stealing formula, no, you didn't, because a baby needs to eat. A baby needs to eat. And it should be possible to get that formula for free or next to free at all times, everywhere. Because as a society, if we care about parents, if we care about children, we need children, especially the littlest ones, to be able to be fed. We also need to think about birth as part of reproductive justice, because birth is so contained. You do not get to make a lot of choices about your own personal body in the course of the standard birth process in this country. A lot of taglines on that, because if you have some money, some resources, you can make different choices. And if you didn't live in the United States, other choices would be more readily available for you. But it is, despite a lot of hard work on the part of midwives and birth doulas, next to impossible to make decisions about your own birth that someone will actually listen to. The person who is pregnant knows the most about what they need. the person who is pregnant knows the most about what they need. That family knows the most about what context of birth is going to make the most sense for them. And of course, everybody deserves the information about the various risks and benefits of home birth and hospital birth and something in between birth. Everybody should get to make their own choice. The way that people tend to give birth in the United States of America, I mean specifically the physical bodily arrangement in which people tend to give birth in the United States of America, pregnant person on their back, stirrups, doctor in between the legs. That organization of bodies has nothing to do with the health of the person giving birth, with the ease of giving birth. What it has to do with is the comfort of the doctor. It is actually a very bad position for a mammal like us to give birth in. If you think about your own hips, regardless of what kind of plumbing you have, if you think about your own hips, in what position are your hips the most comfortable and loose, and is it lying on your back in metal stirrups? Precisely. We also have this problem with pregnancy where we stop seeing people who are pregnant as whole people. We stop seeing them as individuals with personal rights, right? Of folks who have been pregnant, how many of you have had someone touch your stomach while you were pregnant without your consent? Yeah, okay, so I've got a range of ages and like times and places you might have been pregnant. People love to touch a pregnant person's belly with no consent whatsoever. That's still someone's personal private body. Don't touch people without their consent, period. End of story. It does not matter how pregnant they are. That's weird. But also, and I have to thank Mari for this knowledge, because I did not know it before we spoke this week. If you look at images of pregnant people in media, they are almost all headless. In fact, they are also almost all legless. It is a bunch of torsos. As if pregnant bodies exist absent the humans that they are attached to, absent the personality of a face, the motility of some legs. We focus on pregnancy as being about a belly and about a baby, but there is a whole entire person there already experiencing the pregnancy. When we think about pregnancy as about a body disconnected from a person, or as about a baby, not a process of building a baby, not a person whose body is building a whole entire human, it gets really easy to follow laws and practices that say that the most important thing there is the baby that is yet to be, right? We get from there laws that criminalize miscarriage. I don't know if you heard about a young woman in Warren, Ohio recently who had a miscarriage and went to the bathroom and the products of conception went into the toilet, and she got charged with desecration of a corpse. Because there was no person having a tragedy there. There was just a baby. And because she had a miscarriage, she must have done something wrong. Now, thankfully, and through much advocacy, the state of Ohio did not actually press charges, and she is free and clear to continue living her life. But what a traumatic, ridiculous thing to layer on top of something that was already likely pretty traumatic. When we think about it as just torso, as just baby, you get laws that make it so people who have pregnancies that are incompatible with life have to finish the pregnancy, have to give birth to a dead baby. Those are about the most depressing words I've ever said from this particular vantage point, and I want to be clear that I don't say them lightly. This is a thing we make people do in this country. Maybe not right here, but in the country that is ours all the same. We don't think of pregnant people as people. And you've heard me mostly saying pregnant people, not pregnant women or women. And there are in fact two reasons for that. The actual biggest one is that I think when we say pregnant women or expectant mothers in particular, we pull the focus off of the personhood of the person carrying the pregnancy. A person who is pregnant, a woman who is pregnant, is a person. A person, like a whole entire person. I know you know this, but it is really important for me to restate that that is an entire human person. The other piece is that not everybody who gets pregnant is a woman. Some people who are pregnant are non-binary. I'm non-binary, and even though I have been on testosterone for several years, I could still get pregnant, theoretically. Some people who get pregnant are trans men. Some people who get pregnant just don't identify with anything. And they deserve the same high-quality pregnancy and birth care that everybody else does. And they deserve acknowledgement in spaces about pregnancy and reproduction as everybody else does. Yes, absolutely. Most people who get pregnant and give birth are women. That's fine. We can acknowledge that some people aren't and understand that most people are. And again, that word person, that's important for a totally other reason. That word person is important to remind us that people who are pregnant are first and foremost people. I don't care about anything as much as I care about people's ability to know who they are and live in the light of that knowledge. I don't believe in anything more deeply than I believe that people know their own lives, and people given resources and also not given resources will make the best decisions they can for their lives in those moments. I'm not saying nobody ever needs counsel. Literally, look at what I do for a living. I'm not saying that people don't ever make mistakes. I'm saying that people have a right to their mistakes. I'm saying that what might not look like the best choice to you might be the best choice for them, and a choice that maybe they didn't love making when they made it can turn into something beautiful and good in their life. There's a particular story I like to tell about a patient of mine, and I will close with this story. We'll say in advance that I have this person's explicit permission to share this story, though I will share very few identifying details about her. She is the one patient from my time in abortion care who I kept in contact with because I couldn't keep myself from wanting to know where her story went. She was about 19 years old when I first saw her. Actually, my first interaction with her was a phone call with her mother, who tried to lie to me about her name and her date of birth and when her last period was, and basically tried to set up an appointment without giving me any real information. Because her mother was so ashamed that her daughter was pregnant. and so ashamed that her daughter might want to have an abortion. I saw that name come up on the patient list the next day at work, and I said, guys, I got that one. I want to go talk to her. And there she was, 19 years old, relatively early in a pregnancy, and terrified. She had been adopted. She had been internationally adopted by a woman who had herself been adopted. And her mother desperately wanted her to continue that pregnancy and put the baby up for adoption. And she could not do it. She could not live with the idea of having another child, a child that was hers, out in the world who didn't get to know her. She knew what that was like from her own experience, and though she loved her parents and was thankful for their adoption, she couldn't do it. She also couldn't do 9 months of an interrupted life. She was in school. She was studying history and Spanish. She really wanted to graduate and go travel. She wanted to learn to speak Portuguese and visit Brazil, where she had been born. And she wanted to go and travel throughout South and Central America and do good works while she was there. She recognized that she had gotten lucky in being adopted into a relatively wealthy American family, and she wanted to give back to the communities that she came from. And she couldn't see a way to get there if she had to go through 9 months of pregnancy and then either raise a child or live with putting a child up for adoption. I think we talked for 3 hours. One of the real gifts of that job was that if someone needed 3 hours of my time, I could give it to them. And we went back and forth, and we wound up having a conversation about her tattoos. Some of you will maybe remember that one of the first platforms I gave here was about my tattoos and how they are part of how I have made my body feel like it belongs to me, how I enact that my body belongs to me. Her parents, like mine, hated her tattoos, said, "Well, we've taken such good care of you. Why would you do something like that?" I said, "But do you love your tattoos?" "Yeah." "Did your parents get over it eventually?" "Yeah." "Okay. You need to pick a life you're gonna love. You deserve a life that you're gonna love, and any children you ever have deserve a you who gets to love the choices she's made." I held her hand while she had her abortion. I counseled her after her abortion. I also spoke to her parents at length. I spent a lot of time on this one person. And as she left on the day that she came back for her checkup, I slipped her a piece of paper with my email address on it. I said, "I'm not supposed to do this, but I need to know where this story is gonna go." She finished school. She went and she traveled. She spent time in Brazil and in Ecuador and in Honduras. She did some really good work. She traveled more. She went to Australia. She met a man in Australia who she fell in love with. He moved to the United States with her, away from all of his family. They got married. Their triplets are 2 years old. And they are so happy. She has a job that she likes well enough, and really that's all you need to have in a job, is liking it well enough and getting enough money. And she's got these 3 little babies who she is in love with. Almost every time I'm in Ohio, her and I try to see each other. And I'm hesitant to say this because it sounds like gassing myself up a little more than I want it to, but it is true. Every time I see her, she tells me that I saved her life. And I tell her that I didn't do that, I was just there while she did. She is the story I think about when I think about why abortion is fundamental and not enough. She is who I think about when I think about how badly people want you to have a tragic story in order to justify the abortion. There wasn't necessarily a tragedy there. She was just pregnant when she didn't want to be. And that was enough. That she got to make a decision about her life. Not only changed what was possible, but changed how she thought about her life. Everybody deserves to feel like they get to make the choices that are best for them. Everybody deserves freedom from reproductive oppression. Everybody deserves to drive their own life, cautious of that there are other people on the road. Thank you for giving me some time and space to talk about the things that matter the most to me. Thank you for hearing the sometimes difficult things that I have said, about which we may not agree. I don't need you to be right where I am, but I'd like you to think about it. Thank you.
Thing to sit with. Thanks. That was real good. I'm going to share that with a bunch of people. Some of them maybe don't want to hear it, but I'm hoping they listen anyway. In a few moments, we will have our community sharing time when you can write into the chat or share in person about what resonated with you in this platform. While we listen to today's musical response, you might prepare by reflecting on a personal experience or an activity at WES that the platform brings to mind.
Baptism of fire. I never knew what that meant, but now the flames are rising higher. I guess I haven't seen anything yet, because they're coming down around me, and I am rising up like a phoenix from the ashes, wings against the blue. The only way out is through. Forest of fury, kindling of fear. Oh, see how dark the woods have grown after all these years. And now they're coming down around me, and I am rising up like a lily from the shadows, glistening and perfumed. The only way out is through. All the detours taken never lead you home. What a maze you find yourself in, and still alone. Oh, you thought it should be easy, so the truth eluded you. The like tall grass in a wild and reckless wind. And now they're coming down around me, and I am rising up like a great bell resurrected, ringing loud and true. The only way out is through. All the detours taken never lead you home. What a maze you find yourself in, and still alone. Oh, you thought it should be easy, so the truth eluded you. The only way out is through. The only way out is through. The only way out is through.
This is the time when we add our own voices to the mooring, sharing our reflections on the platform and what resonates with our personal experience. For our online participants, I invite you to share in the Zoom chat or in the comments if you are watching the recording later. If you're here in person, you can come to the microphone here on the floor and share your brief comments so that others may also share. Let's start by checking to see what online participants have written in the Zoom comments. Judy Meyer shares, so amazing. Thank you, Casey. Sue Jacobson says, wow, such a powerful platform. Thank you. Sam Nguyen says, thank you, Casey, for a powerful platform. I learned a lot and appreciate your experience and expertise on the subject. And Judy quotes, everyone deserves to be born because someone said yes, not because they didn't or couldn't say no. Now let's turn our attention to commenters in the hall. Please begin by saying your name and if you'd like to share your pronouns. Please be sure to keep your comments brief, perhaps no more than a minute or two, so others have a chance to share.
Hey everybody, I'm Robin, she, her. So funny story. I'm the other staff member that was in a sorority. And we had to have required community service hours. And I went to a college initially in very rural Tennessee, very conservative, very large ag program. I was there because it gave me the most money. I was not there for the culture. And my service hours were I would drive my peers to the abortion clinic in Nashville so that they didn't have to ask for gas or whatever. But it was always a joy to turn in my volunteer hours. So, our executive board always had to approve them. And I would stand there in front of them and I'm like, I dare you to tell me this doesn't count. I dare you. So I always loved being able to just be like, there was just a joy in providing care and comfort at what feels like somebody's like hardest time in their life, and just know like we can put in a CD and rock out all the way in town. It was 90 minutes each way. And know that just like you're sitting with someone and fully accepting them and seeing them for everything they are is just such a powerful way. And I think I learned a whole lot more than my sorority sisters that chose to do different volunteer activities. So.
Good morning, Jeff Mehall here. Two things. First, Casey, you and I have got to get together to compare and discuss the joys of living in a small town. Streetsboro, Ohio for you. It was Waseca, Minnesota for me. And Waseca was primarily dominated by two religions, Roman Catholicism or Lutheranism, neither of which are particularly open to sexual education. So it was no surprise that year after year, about a third of the graduating senior high school girls would be pregnant. And this was chalked up by the clergy to the licentiousness of the media and everything else, never mind that you're in a small town in Minnesota with nothing to do. But I also wanted to mention, which is a family story, and turning the clock back to the first decade of the 20th century, my mother's grandmother, who died before I was born, she was a midwife in the town of Stede, which is now part of Greater Hamburg, but at the time was its own separate community. And she had tended to the pregnancies and births of too many young women who had fallen prey to that really nasty line that men will use. Well, some men will use. I've never used it. I never used it. But the line is, and I'm sure you know it, I'm sure you might have heard it, if you love me, you will prove your love to me. And she was determined that that was not going to happen to her daughter. It almost did. My grandmother said no, the guy took off, and my grandmother was just in tears and very upset and was thinking of going back to the guy and having sex with him before she was ready. And my great-grandmother said, don't worry about this, I will handle it. And the way my great-grandmother handled it was to take her daughter to the offices of Hamburg America Line and get her on a ship to New York, where my grandmother went into domestic service in New York's Upper East Side in a neighborhood called Yorkville, which was a German-American and very prosperous. And the idea was that she would be in domestic service for 5, maybe 6 years, learn a little bit about what life is all about, then come back, and if she got that line tossed at her again, could tell the guy to buzz off. Well, yeah, 1914, the war breaks out, and she could have gone back, but in 1915, the Lusitania is sunk, and then it's like everything stops as far as getting back to Germany. Then after the war, there's the influenza outbreak, and then there's the polymerase. So she didn't get back to visit her mom until 1923, but that's a whole other story, and it's basically why I'm here and not, you don't have empty air in front of the mic.
I'm Art Siebens. I taught biology in the DC public schools. They get a bad rap because, well, there's a lot of bad things about DC public schools, but I was free and was very conscious that I was free to teach anything I wanted about sex, show them videos about animal sex so that they know it's natural. And most places in the country, teachers are not free like that. They're highly restricted. The school boards only look at the evolution and sex chapters in the biology book. So just a comment about American education has a long ways to go in terms of freedom.
Hi, I hadn't planned to get up, but I saw so many men getting up. I thought some woman ought to get up and admit who had had an abortion and should admit it. I was raised Catholic and went through the 12th grade. Went to Catholic schools, and in the senior year was the first time they had sex education, and the boys went off and had, I don't know if it was a priest or a doctor or what they had, but what we had, the girls had, was a woman who was a psychologist, a brilliant woman. She also was a regular doctor. I mean, she was both a psychologist and a regular MD. And, went through the whole, drawings of what happens when your sperm goes up and all this basic stuff. And I'll never forget, I raised my hand in the back of the room, and I said, what's an orgasm? And she, here she is in a Catholic school, what's she going to say? She said, well, it's a pleasurable muscle spasm. We all went, oh, that's really interesting. But that's what I started with. I ended up in college becoming an atheist, so that changed everything for me. And then years go by, and I'm involved with a man that I lived with and then later married, but at the time we weren't married. And I had been on the pill, and I went off it for a while, and stupidly, but at any rate, and got pregnant. And I never talk about why. I don't think it's anybody's business but my own, but it was an important, very important reason, and it had some national implications for work I was doing on. So I could not have this kid. And Ted, my then partner and later husband, he didn't care. He'd had children. If I wanted it, fine. If I didn't, that was okay too. It was my choice. So then I did have it. But even after that, until a few years ago, I never admitted to anyone that I'd had one. There is a certain shame for women back, I think, of my age, particularly in raised Catholic, I guess. Who knows how much stays in your head? But nevertheless, a few years ago, I decided when so much trauma was about, and you knew at some point this awful Supreme Court was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. I finally decided, women like me need to get up and be honest about it and come out of the closet so that those who, including in my still Catholic family, will know that they know somebody who's had one and they happen to love this person as they love me and I love them. And even my two sisters, I just told them in the past year, so this is recent as far as the family goes. And in both cases, I asked them what they believed, because they're both very religious, life at conception. They both believe that life begins at conception. And that's when I decided to tell them that, well, you need to know what I did, and that I had a good reason for it. I won't tell you why, but I know you love me and I still love you. And I think it's important they know that. They can never say that they've never met somebody who's had one. They can never say that. And also that it's somebody that they care about.
Thank you, Loretta, for your courage. I'm Mari, she, her, and I just want to name something that I feel like needs to be named explicitly in this conversation, which is that the reason we need to fight for reason there's any struggle for reproductive justice is because of misogyny, and because birth and the ability to create a human in your body is an incredible power. And men throughout the ages have wanted to leash that power and control that power, whether it's by telling us whether or not we should have babies, whether it's by strapping us down to produce those babies, whether it's taking control of the whole birth process. There's just incredibly deep roots in misogyny in hospitals, in abortion rights, in all of the aspects, whether or not you can breastfeed in public, all of those things. None of them are rooted in science. They're all rooted in misogyny, and I just needed to say that out loud. And that is as a person who's had 2 very carefully planned children, 2 completely unplanned children, and 2 terminations.
I'm Carl Kosak, and I've had about a half a dozen careers, and one I'm very proud of is I worked at New York City Planned Parenthood doing research and evaluation, and in international Planned Parenthood. And thank you very much for this platform, and I think it's extremely important, and really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Jo London, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I was very interested to know that my mother, who was born in 1904 and was the youngest of 6 children, she had 2 sisters. All 3 of them had abortions because it was obviously illegal at the time. And it was all with the same doctor. My father died when I was 3, but before he died, my mother got pregnant again after I was born, but he was already sick, and she did not want to have 3 children to take care of because I have an older brother. And so that's why she had an abortion. And I'm just very glad that that doctor was available.
Hi, I'm Julie, she, her. I feel really lucky that I've never been raped and I never had an abortion. Although I have so many friends who've been through both. I've also feel very lucky that I had the parents that I had. My father was a sex ed teacher. My mother was a charter subscriber to Ms. Magazine. They had copies of The Joy of Sex in the house. They taught me about consent. I had my first sex ed in the Reform Synagogue where I went as a child. It was the rabbi's sister who was a nurse who sat us together, girls and boys together, and passed around every form of contraception and explained to us how to use it. I had a copy of Our Bodies, Ourselves as a teenager. My brother took me to my first National Women's Rights March here in Washington, where we were bussed down from Philadelphia and the buses were allowed to park in the Pentagon parking lot. You know, this was a long time ago. I've said before that I was a radical feminist activist on my campus where there was a lot of attention, a women's studies major, and a lot of attention to reproductive rights. We read about Gloria Steinem, who said if men could get pregnant, abortion would be a sacrament, was one of the phrases that she used in her speeches. I got involved in clinic defense, where we would try to help women who are getting abortions walk past all sorts of very horrible anti-abortion activists with their bloody fetus posters. I just think it's really important for us to talk about poor women's access to abortion, and you talked about it in terms of money, should be federally funded, in my opinion. That means that poor women have a right to give birth without being judged as someone who's just doing it in order to get a bigger welfare check. That means that poor women have a right to access to adoption without any judgment. That means that poor women should not be sterilized, which has happened in this country, even not that long ago, to Latina women who have, are immigrant women who are detained by the government. That means that incarcerated pregnant women given birth should have epidurals if they want it and should not be shackled, which is a law which has been overturned in Maryland state government, a campaign led by my best friend, who is a state senator from Baltimore. And I want to just mention, and I do this every year on January 22nd, I post to Facebook that people should go and listen to a docufiction, a mockumentary that I produced back in the early 90s called After Roe, and it imagined a country where abortion became illegal again. And I interviewed women who had an illegal abortion, how horrific it was. I interviewed doctors who had to try to operate on these women who came in after illegal, unsafe abortions and had sepsis and described it in detail. I interviewed women abortion rights activists, anti-abortion rights activists who run those pregnancy, care centers that women think they're going to get real care, but they're not. And others, and I imagine some other horrible things, including like national monuments to aborted fetuses and other things. It's called After Roe. It can be searched and found through Google. And I also recommend that people watch a movie, I think it's available on Netflix, called Jane. And it's about the abortion underground that happened particularly in Chicago, where women helped other women get safely illegal abortions, and then some of the women learned how to perform them themselves because it was not all that complicated and you didn't have to be a doctor to do it.
Hi, Laura. She, hers. Sometime in the 70s, I was walking down Madison Avenue in New York with my mother. We'd just had dinner. And all of a sudden, she said, I had an abortion. Out of the blue. She didn't give me any details, but it was either in the 60s or the 70s. It was before Roe. It was someplace in Brooklyn with who God knows who. About 5-10 years later, I find out my sister also had an abortion, which she shared with me. I took a best friend who was Catholic to have her abortion. I took another best friend who isn't Catholic to have her abortion. And what I'd like to have happen is for maybe you and Mari get together and put resources on our website for what we can do. We're in Maryland and DC. It's like the free land here, but it's not in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, or Virginia. We can help those women who need that help. So please show us what we can do, where we can go, and who to talk to.
Okay. I'm another Laura. There's a lot of us here, they, them. I have fertility issues. I need intervention from a doctor to have a child, and did, because y'all see Lily running around. I've also had an abortion, because when we tried to have a second child, none of the pregnancies that resulted from IVS were viable. And the first time that happened, I scheduled an abortion and went in, and a couple weeks before Roe came down, and day before Roe came down, and I was in and out and back to work the next day, comfortable and happy. And the second time this happened, I said, well, it's like 3 days before Christmas. I don't think I can get this scheduled. So if I haven't naturally miscarried by New Year's, I'll go schedule it. Let me tell you, naturally miscarrying sucks. As I put it, I did a Casper impression from the blood loss and went off to the ER, where they very rightly assessed that I was not in danger of dying and sat for 4 hours before they saw me, made sure that I hadn't brought the tissue with me, and put me on an IV to hydrate for half an hour before they sent me home at midnight. I really preferred the surgery. And it's just, everybody should be able to have that comfortably and safely.
I'm going to take the officiant's prerogative and briefly note that Maryland will have a constitutional amendment on the ballot in the fall to enshrine abortion rights in Maryland's Constitution. If you live in Maryland, I urge you to vote for it. You will hear more about that from me, basically whether you like it or not, because I have a number of friends who are working on the campaign. Going back to Zoom momentarily, Gwen Warman notes, I can try to speak English. Thank you, Casey, for covering such an expansive range of what reproductive justice and needs mean. There are so many ways to experience pregnancy and the decisions people deserve to have support in making. And thank you so very much to Loretta, Mari, and Joe, Mari, get it right, and Joe for your important and vulnerable sharing. Peter notes he began his involvement with politics with the abortion question, initially doing the mailing list for Morale, the Massachusetts organization for the repeal of abortion laws, but later became a state lobbyist for the Massachusetts Americans for Democratic Action. And Cynthia Goodman says, my mother insisted that she could not remember what her sister died of as a young woman. My cousin told me that she died of a botched abortion. My mother was just too ashamed to admit that. That happened in the 40s or 50s in France. I think that's why my mother was such a strong supporter of Planned Parenthood. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you to all who shared their thoughts, and attention. Just as we share our perspectives in this community, so too do we share our resources and gifts. Here at WES, we split all undesignated gifts in the Sunday collection between our operating budget and a fund dedicated to justice and compassion. During the month of January, we are continuing to support Sister Song, a Southern-based organization dedicated to building an effective network of individuals and organizations to improve policies and systems that impact the reproductive lives of marginalized communities. Sister Song mobilizes a vast base of supporters in rapid response organizing to protect the rights of women of color and other marginalized women and trans people in the South. You can learn more about their vital work at their website, sistersong.net, and in the video that they have produced called Visioning New Futures for Reproductive Justice on that website. Let's all take a moment to prepare to respond to the invitation to generosity as we are able. To donate online through the Simple Gift system, text an amount to 202-335-1885. Go to tiny.cc/westgives, or click on Give on our website, ethicalsociety.org. To donate in person today, just place cash or check in the basket at the back of the hall on your way out, and you can always send a check by mail. You can send a text by mail too. Maybe not the best way to send a text, though. Thank you for your generosity. We will now receive your gifts and more gifts of music.
It's not simple to say. Most days I don't recognize me. These shoes and this apron, that place and its patrons have taken more than I gave them. It's not easy to know I'm not anything like I used to be, though it's true I was never attention sweet center. I still remember that girl. She's imperfect, but she tries. She is good, but she lies. She is hard on herself. She is broken and won't ask for help. She is messy, but she's kind. She is lonely most of the time. She is all of this mixed up and baked in a beautiful pie. She is gone, but she used to be mine. It's not what I asked for. Sometimes life just slips in through a back door and carves out a person and makes you believe it's all true. And now I've got you. You're not what I asked for. If I'm honest, I know I would give it all back for a chance to start over and rewrite an ending or two. For the girl that I knew who'd be reckless just enough, who can hurt, but who learns how to toughen up when she's bruised and gets used by a man who can't love. Then she'll get stuck and be scared of the life that's inside her, growing stronger each day till it finally reminds her to fight just a little, to bring back the fire in her eyes that's been gone, that used to be mine. It used to be mine. She is messy, but she's kind. She is lonely time she is all of this mixed up and baked in a beautiful pie. She is gone, but she used to be mine.
Thank you so much to the many people who helped to create this morning's time together. Today's platform speaker, Casey Slack, guest musicians, Mari, Breen Rothman. I don't know why this is so hard for me to pronounce. We even talked about it. Accompanied by Susan Alexander. Staff members Indara Miles, Robin Kravitz, and Maceo Thomas. And of course, our platform production volunteers, the tech team members, slide artists, Zoom chat ushers, and today's in-person greeters, both substitutes, Busola and Ann Baker. Thank you so much. I want to mention a few things coming up in the vibrant life of our community. I invite you to explore one or more of the many opportunities WES offers for connection. From the music team, if you have a song or two you'd like to sing or play for a Sunday platform on a mix and match music day, we'd love to hear from you. That goes for both adults and teens. It would be particularly apt to have some of WES's young people contribute music to a February platform, given the social justice theme of children and labor. Please contact Karen Storms for more information or to offer your musical services. Today, from 12:30 to 2, join the team of WES's Community Relations Committee and Lifelong Learning to continue their series on creating a caring culture by confronting harmful power structures. The topic of today's lesson is quantity over quality mindsets. Meet in the social hall just on the other side of the foyer at 12:30 p.m. Also this afternoon, 2 virtual meetings taking place are the Sci-Fi Book Club at 1:30 and the Mental Health Support Group at 2 p.m. Next Sunday, WES member Peter Bishop will speak on the topic of human intelligence with music from member Jeffrey Taggart and his friend. That's it for announcements today. As always, you can find information about opportunities to connect in the weekly news and notes email and on the calendar page of WES's website, ethicalsociety.org. Again, if you are new to our community, please introduce yourself in person or via the connection form at tiny.cc/WES Connects, or send an email to wes@ethicalsociety.org. At the conclusion of the platform, please join us for social time, either here or on Zoom at tiny.cc/WES Coffee Hour. Before our closing words, we have a final song from our guest musicians, If You Say Yes.
I just wanted to say, Julie, I loved your quote, and I thought you might like to know that she was quoting Simone de Beauvoir from The Second Sex, which should be required reading for everyone. Somebody said, gotta watch your step, gotta close your eyes, gotta hold your breath. Somebody said, if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? Somebody said, gotta lock your car, gotta draw the shades, gotta bolt the door. Somebody said, if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? But that fussy old crow's on the gutter again, and the tufty little bird's in the backyard tree, and I've worn holes in my blue jeans down on my knees. Somebody said if you sing too loud or you dance too wild, stick out in a crowd. Somebody said if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? Somebody said if you rock the boat, if you climb too high, if you swim the moat. Somebody said if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? But I ran outside in the howling rain, thought, what have I got to lose? For just a glimpse of some good news, I'm down on my knees. Somebody said, don't act too smart, don't start to cry, don't fall apart. Somebody said, if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? Somebody said, you aren't enough, too soft and sweet, just gotta get tough. Somebody said if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? But I hear the beat of the strongest heart, and I would walk 1,000 miles for just a moment of your smile. I'm down on my knees. Somebody said you're so naive to hope so hard to just believe. Somebody said if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? Somebody said it'll stay the same. It's always been, it'll never change. Somebody said if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead? Where will it lead you? But there's you now, 1,000,000 strong, and your voice there, 1,000,000,000 votes for just the smallest speck of hope. I'm down on my knees. Somebody said, gotta watch your step. Somebody said, gotta just get tough. Somebody said, if you sing too loud, or you rock the boat, or you aren't enough. Somebody said, if you say yes, where will it lead? Where will it lead you?
A final announcement before our closing words, one that I missed, and apologies, Loretta, I didn't put together the script today, so that's my only excuse. At WES's Aging with Intention group will be on Zoom today from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And now for our closing words, let us go into the week ahead with compassion, understanding, and commitment, seeking liberation for all from the margins to the center. Thank you all for joining today's platform in person or remotely. We look forward to connecting with you again soon.